Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monday, 1 o'clock. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of fmtraining.tv, where we have awesome video training. We have recorded video courses, and of course, we have this live stream here that you have found one way or the other. I want to welcome Calvin Mosiman. Calvin, are you there? Can you show us your
I am
screen?
here, yes.
There's Calvin. Calvin, where are you at? You're a senior engineer. How long have you been working here?
Since 2008, so that's 12 years.
Awesome. So we have my sugar-free popsicle to keep everything going here. So Calvin, you have been here a long time, and it's exciting to bring real people into this training. We're going to be bringing Christian Olsen into this training as well. Nick Hunter, frankly, I needed a lot of adult beverages on Friday because a week of Nick Hunter was a lot last week. All right, so we're going to be doing SQL. So today, let me just do a little bit more stuff here, Calvin, before we get too carried away with you. Today's live training is going to be using our scale of what the hell are we doing and how hard is it today. So this is our little scale right here. This is a business owner, manager level of people. We have brand new developers here. If we're going to be doing stuff today is going to start, you need to be probably at least an intermediate developer. So if you're a brand new FileMaker person, unless you come from another database world, stuff we're going to do today is going to cause your head to explode. I can't help you with that today. It's just a brutal part of the technical. Well, if you're technical, it's not a problem at all. It's easy. But if you were like a normal human and then you got stuck building FileMaker applications and you had to learn what a relationship was and a join and a many-to-many relationship and all this stuff, then this is the next step in your learning, and it could be a little difficult. So intermediate to advanced advanced users today will be the group. Calvin's here to walk us through that. Once again, I want to remind everyone that if you want to write a review about what you think about the training, if you watch different training, you want to put a review in. This helps us get the visibility with Claris so they can see that there are people who watch this who actually care, who actually like it. Make sure you say the word FileMaker in there, not that Richard or Calvin sucks or whatever you would say. Just make sure that you put the word FileMaker in there is helpful so they understand it's real. And put a couple sentences in there if you feel the price of admission today was right. Feel free to write us a review. Once again, one last note is I want to say thanks to everyone because we are currently the #1 training resource in the FileMaker community. And it just, as soon as FileMaker actually started keeping track of the metrics and stuff, we went from like off the radar to #1. So that's how that works. We've been doing this for a long time. We always knew that, but to actually have a system that says, hey, you're #1 is actually kind of interesting. So anyway, very cool. Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping us be successful, helping deliver great training to you. Calvin, we're going to kick it over to you. And then one last thing for all of you who are wondering about this. My people ask me, well, Richard, we need help with server setup or we need whatever. We need help with licensing. My team always reminds me to mention that we actually do all these bits and pieces. So if you're trying to buy FileMaker and you get stuck or it doesn't make sense or it's confusing, which frequently it can be, it seems that every year Claris is changing how they charge and what they do. They've made 3 or 4 changes in the last 12 months, at least. 1, 2, 3, 4 changes that I can count. To way they do their pricing and stuff. So if you're confused by all that, you need a little bit of help, feel free to email us at support@RC Consulting, and Ryan Correa, who should be watching right now, he should be there. He should be able to answer your questions and walk you through stuff. And if you need some technical assistance, we'll do that. We're not going to leave you hanging. We want people to know. Calvin, are you ready to go? Now that we've got stuff
I'm ready to go.
Okay, so I'm going to make you full screen, and I'm going to gnaw my fudge sickle here.
So today we're talking about ExecuteSQL, the function, and we're going to start off just from the very beginning and make it as easy as possible, especially for people who've never used ExecuteSQL. So here's FileMaker's help, and the first thing to note that is the only supports select statements. So we can put a select statement in, and it gives us a result based on our criteria. But before we start really talking about why do we care, and this is kind of a continuation of some conversations we've had before. the chart demo where we were demoing our charts, all of the stats that are presented here in these charts that look really nice and really communicate the data, all of those charts are generated using ExecuteSQL select statement. In the FM starting point, we use a select statement to generate the events in the calendar. So every time you refresh the calendar, you select up here and refresh or open the calendar, then there's a select statement in the background that's gathering all of that event data. So it's really, and we can present it in this really nice way in the web viewer. So select statements are really, using the ExecuteSQL with a select statement is really powerful and can be used in a lot of different applications.
So basically, it's just a find command, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's basically a find, and those are some places that we use it.
Okay, and I'm getting a little bit of crackling on your microphone or headset, so just go easy with that part of it.
Okay.
So, I mean, we need to make this as basic as possible. I mean, I want to say this up front real quick, that there's a lot of folks here who are advanced developers, and if you already know about the ExecuteSQL, then maybe this is not the live stream for you. You can just put it in the background and listen to it. IMOG and then Andre, etc. A lot of people are like that. But we're going to try to keep it on the basic level side. So as many analogies, Calvin, as possible on this, okay? All right.
Okay.
Back at you, baby.
So the ExecuteSQL is really just like we're performing a find, and one of the powerful things about it is that it's not bound by context. So I've got the sample file here, and I call it my ExecuteSQL demo sandbox, and it's not a very there's not a whole lot going on here. Let me just show you in the database definitions. We've got names, and that's 500 records, and they're just name, just basic contact information. And then I've got requests, and this is where we're tracking our SQL queries and putting the result in a global field. So the simplest, when we create a select, we have to say select and where we're what we want and where we're selecting from. Actually, let me go show you this the script. It's really simple. All we're saving is we're setting a variable that runs that ExecuteSQL. And here I have our parameters in the bottom, so you can kind of see what that is. We put in our query, our separator, field separator and row separator. If you don't define a field separator and row separator, then by default, the field separator is a comma and the row separator is a return. And we'll show you how that.
Okay, hold before you go flying out. Because we're doing basics today, once again, reminder that the two little slashes right there indicate a commented out string. So this string theoretically could be executed. It would fail because it's not; those aren't real data. But the two slashes there, this is kind of more of a basic. It's a basic advanced day. So the two slashes means we could write a book in there. You know, the red fox jumped over the hill and then went to Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah. So here the first line is what's running our button. And the second line is just a comment so you can see what that function looks like. A lot of times when I'm writing a calculation, I'll put whatever functions I'm using as comments at the bottom just so it reminds me what the options are in those areas for that function. I'll go ahead and say OK. And then we're just setting the result in the global field. I'm going to close this. And let's go ahead and write a query. I don't have any stuff in here, so we're trying it live. So I'm going to say select, and I'm just going to put a star in there. That's Shift 8, and that just tells it to select everything from all the fields from the table. And I'll say from names, and let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. So I said run, and we'll see let's zoom in a little bit. Make that a little bigger. So you'll see that we have these field values, and each field value is separated by a comma. And then each record, so this first row here, is record 1. Second row here is record 2. And you can kind of see we've got the city, state, zip, phone number, and those are all separated by those commas. So let's go. So right now that we did a star, and we ran this to get our data, just to grab all the data. Let's specify something else. Let's say we want state. Okay, so I just selected state and from the names. Let's go ahead and look at what our other options are in there. We'll go to names. We've got first name, last name, company. Let's go ahead, and each thing that we're selecting needs to be, each field column that we're selecting needs to be separated by a comma. So let's go ahead and say company and run. So there now we have states and companies. Let's say first name, run, and now we've got the first name. And so you can put it together. If you wanted to just select certain data, you could select any fields that you want and have those for a report or whatever kind of data you would want. So that's one of the really powerful things, is just being able to grab data from one place to another. You want to be careful though, if we spell something wrong, like name, right there, we get this question mark. Something's wrong here. Now, if you'll notice in my database definitions, we've got names, but when we run the query, it's actually based on the table occurrence name. So if I change this to TO1 names, I still have a table called names in there, but no table occurrence name names. If I say run, it's going to give me that question mark. If I put in the TO1 names, it works again. So you just got to be careful about those naming. Make sure that when you're messing around with this, that could be a problem that you run into.
So the state is the table, correct, or the TO, right? Yes.
No, the state's the field.
The field. Okay, so walk us through this again, because it's not really obvious as much as it should be, right?
Okay, so when we say select, we're saying what columns are we selecting? Select column, the field state, select the field column company, select the field column first name. Where do we want to select it from? Select it from table occurrence 1 names.
Okay, great.
Or TO1 names.
So we just said give us 4 fields is all we did. And it gives us that's all because remember, this doesn't care about found sets and stuff like that, at least. Like if we had a found set up here, right? Notice that where's this? Are these? We're in a table with only 2 records, right? But
right. So here's a table with 500 records.
Yeah.
And this is just a test table. So the records here don't make much of a difference.
Okay.
When I say run, there should be 500 lines
in
this
so
result.
this command doesn't care about us up here. It's not using a relationship to get there. It simply goes, oh, we're over here with like 1 to 2 records. It simply flies over here, finds the 500 records, rolls them up, and then returns them to us in a list.
Let's go ahead and look at the relationship graph.
Yeah, it's very important that people, because this is this is the one benefit really of this. Well, there's several benefits, but this is the one benefit, is that you can jump across TOs and stuff without building FileMaker relationships, which is kind of cool.
Right. It doesn't take the context into account, and you'll see there's no relationship here. We're creating the query in the request table, and we are looking at the data in names, but there's no connection. We don't have to open a new window and go there and do a search. It's just based on what we tell it we want. So we're saying select these fields from this table occurrence. Let's go ahead and look at some other options that we have. Now, say I want to see, let's say these are invoices, and I want to see how many invoices came from each state. So I'm going to say count, and from state, I'll say run, and we'll see there's 5.
There's 500 records there, right? Or rows, right? Once again, this is where terminology comes in a little bit here. So once again, Database terminology in the world of FileMaker are a little bit different. It's been kind of made more friendly and neighborly as opposed to like hardcore coder kind of conversation. So columns are fields, right? Fields,
Right.
so it's like an Excel column, that kind of idea. And then rows are the records, right? So you hear rows and columns frequently in the world of SQL here as well. You have to be able to translate those. When you hear the term stored procedure, that generally means script. So stored procedure scripts, a TO with a certain context would be a view. That's a view. There's all sorts of little things that you start to learn the terminology. I learned it from the FileMaker side, then went the other way to learn the other side. But a lot of people come here, like Andre, I think, and some of the other folks. And Calvin or Christian has a comment here. He says, but they learned it coming the other way from a technical side. So Christian says, Ron, SQL can be slower because FileMaker, yeah. So so I've talked about this before. I kind of assume that people are cumulatively watching us, but that's not true. So maybe this is your first live broadcast in our training. Execute SQL will not be, pound for pound, will not be any faster in FileMaker than what FileMaker normally could do for you. The reason is that FileMaker fundamentally is not an SQL database. In order for FileMaker to do these commands, it actually translates it into instructions that FileMaker understands under the hood, like find, for example. And then what it does is it goes and executes that information, brings it back, and then it comes back initially as FileMaker-y kind of display. It has to reformat it in a way that is what would be expected from SQL. So it has to translate the request, and then it has to translate the data back. It's pound for pound, not faster. People get really excited. Like a new feature comes out, and I remember everyone lost their mind. Oh, this is the best thing ever. It's the best thing ever. And I'm like going, right? If I wanted a really great SQL database, I wouldn't use FileMaker, right? The reason we use FileMaker so we don't have to get super nerdy, super technical down in the weeds with a tool like that. We want to use a happier, fluffier tool with a mouse, right? Here, see my mouse? And so the rub is if I want to do command line, as Nick Hunter would say, nasty, then yeah, we would screw FileMaker. We use SQL or Oracle or MySQL or something that's cheaper, right? FileMaker is not that cheap, but it brings a lot of simplicity to it. So understand that SQL, they put this in here to solve a couple interesting problems. You can generate data and establish relationships. A SQL command can temporarily establish a relationship, generate the data from that relationship, bring it back to you, and you never actually had to connect two table occurrences together. That is what it's really great at doing. You can't edit data, you can't delete data, you can't create new records in FileMaker's SQL. It's only the select statement, which is basically a find, right? And understand that it will, the benefit of why it works well is that, like Calvin says as a database, we're going to go back to your screen, Calvin, real quick. Can you bring up the table occurrence, the TOs for me? All right, so notice that there's no connection here. So this is the one with 500 records. This is like your reporting table with 1 or 2 records in it, right? So this is 500 there. I can't really draw. And so what ends up happening is that he could actually, say you had names, you had invoices, you had people wanting returns, you had aliens, zombies from Mars. And you could actually say, well, how many names are from here that did this, that I happen to know someone who's an alien from Mars. You could actually write an SQL statement, which we may or may not get to probably tomorrow, and where you explain what the relationships are. It goes and it derives the data. It gets a big list for you. And when it's done, it like temporarily creates a relationship. It executes it, and then it dissolves it. It's there. It's temporary. It's an imaginary temporary construct. It does it, then it dissolves the relationship. So you come back in here, notice there are no relationships. If you had all those tables here, they would not have to be connected because SQL gives you the flexibility of doing an ad hoc connection just for that moment in time. And so it solves kind of that problem. Does it do it any faster? No. So like people say, well, I've got 1 million records and I want to sort those records and return this and blah, 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 blah. And they find out that, well, SQL is not amazingly faster on the FileMaker platform. It has the same limitations that FileMaker does. It allows you more creative ways of establishing the criteria of a report. right? That makes sense. Calvin, you want to speak to this a little bit?
Yeah, so it doesn't so the ExecuteSQL isn't the end all be all for everything. Sometimes when we get a new tool, we are just so excited about the new tool that we just have to use it everywhere, and we want to try to use it everywhere. But as you use it more, you realize sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. So knowing when to use it, when not to. It's not necessarily faster, but than using basic FileMaker features. But in those cases where you want it, that you need it, you can get some data really fast. So looking.
Yeah. And before we jump forward here, I'm just gonna Christians. For those of you, once again, there's about a minute and a half delay between when you type something, we see it, and then I respond to it. But there's a buffering of the video that long. Christians, Ron asked, well, why the hell would I use, basically, he says, why the hell would I use this, right? He's being nice about it, but it's a really great question, right? Why would you use it? And that's where we kind of explained it. I'm going to repeat what Christian said for the people on YouTube. Real world case, if a customer that needs to display a sum of records in objects, but basically display a sum of records, because the word objects is not a FileMaker really term. It's kind of a loose term that I don't want to try to define that. But if a customer has a need to display a set of records and those sums were not easily found with a relationship or with the relationships currently in the file, in your FileMaker solution, SQL is very useful because it can generate a list or a virtual list of information by basically temporarily connecting relationships. So once again, it can go places where your relational diagram is not set up to go at the moment. Now you could set it up. You could do all this in FileMaker, but if you just need it for reporting real quick, why to go to the hassle of setting all the relationships up in FileMaker, right? I mean, the thing is, I think this is kind of an important piece. The people who love SQL, Calvin and everyone else out there, the people who love this, the people that come from the other side of the world. Okay, they are technical. They are coders. They're Java coders, JavaScript. They do Ruby, Rails. They do PHP. They do all this stuff. They love to play in Amazon services. We all know people like that. A bunch of them work for me. Then there's a bunch of like what I would consider normal humans, and they are doctors, nurses, pilots, firefighters, accountants, librarians, government employees, and they all have a day job, but then somewhere along the line they had to learn FileMaker because it solved some problem for them. Those people don't give a flip about SQL. It wasn't built for you. Okay, it was built really for these other people who they could that already were kind of either already knew SQL or they had a propensity to learn SQL because it was kind of up their alley. So really, because in the FileMaker world, there's really these two groups of people, right? You've got the code people that love the code, and you've got the normal, what I call normal humans that had a day job and they came over here to solve a problem because it needed to be solved. FileMaker is a great tool for solving it. Not every tool is perfect for everyone. So we're teaching you this SQL tool, but understand that it's probably not meant for Ron. If you don't understand why it's useful at this point, probably not meant for you, right? So I will give you a refund on today's price that you paid for admission and invite you back on Wednesday when we start the next topic, which won't be on SQL. But today and tomorrow is the SQL, and it's important to frame the conversation so everyone understands it. So Calvin, I'm going to mute myself, shut up, and let you continue.
Yeah, just to go back to a use case where it made sense, I had a client who's a doctor, and his team was comfortable using using SQL select statements in other data systems to generate stats for papers that they were writing. And the fact that they could write select statements in FileMaker had a lot of pull on them using that platform for their for tracking certain stats for medical records. So and this next step that I'd like to show kind of answers some of the questions of why the select statement using ExecuteSQL is really awesome in FileMaker. So I already have state in here. I'm just going to put state in here again. See if that works. It didn't. Okay. So I'm going to say select state and count, and now from names, and I'm going to group by state. So run, And now I have all this report. I didn't have to have any summary fields. I didn't have to create any unstored calculations. And right here, I have a list of all of the states that are represented in my 500 records and how many records for each state there are. So I'm saying select state, and that's the first one. I'm selecting count, and that's how many of each occurrence there is in each one. And I'm grouping by state. So we'll see that it's in alphabetical order by state, and we're getting those totals. And so this is a really great way that we're pulling this data. Now let me go ahead and change, instead of saying the count of states, I'm going to change this to sum, so that'd be the total, and then point it to the field amount, which is a number field. I'll just show you what that looks like over here. So we've got amount, and it's a number field. I'll say OK. So you could think of amount, if this was a table of invoices, amount would be the total of the invoice. I'll run it again. And here, sorted by alphabetical order by state, we have the total amount for each state. Now say, just like we had in our chart demo over here, say you have a number of salespeople, and you want to know how many sales each of them had. We could run a select statement like that and find out how many sales they had, or what the value of those sales were, or what the value of the sales were by state. And we can add some other fields in there as well. So we see the total. Maybe we want to see what the biggest order was in each state. So I'm going to put state, and then we're looking at max, the greatest number. And so here's the highest number for each state. As you look down, you can see what the biggest order amount was for each. And you'd probably use something to make this look a little better, and you could put some formatting with a virtual list and a pivot table. You could, that we talked about previously, you could put this data in there and have currency formatting. Let's go ahead. So we did count, how many orders per state, sum, the total, max, the highest one. We can do minimum, min for min, and that will give us the lowest number for those amounts. And my data might have just had the same value in each record, it looks like. So there's the minimum, and then here's a really great one. And each of these things that we're searching for, each of these summaries would require a different summary field in your table. But doing it with this, we don't have to have those summary fields. And here I just did average. What's the average order for each state? And we could group this by any other field. We could group it by last name. This is probably going to be a bit longer. We have to update both the select and the group by, and say run. So here we have all of our last names and what the average amount was for each name. Maybe let's do sum, so we get the total. So there's a lot of different reporting that we're seeing, that we can see happen with these different functions that we have in here. Now, by default, this is sorting in order by alphabetically. So we have A through Z, and but we can change that by, we have a group by. Let's do order by, and we'll say last name and descending. And that's going to reverse the order. Let's go ahead and see that. So here's Z, and it goes down. Let me go ahead and make my field a little wider so we can see the whole thing. Our statements are getting longer and longer. So we could have this ascending, ASC, run that, or descending. And so we've got all of these different ways that we can manipulate the data to change it, to change what our result is. So let's go back to looking at the state. And we want to order by and group by state. I'll run that one more time so we have our state information. And now maybe we want to see only records from a given state. So that's where we would bring in a where. So we'll say select these fields from the names, group by state, order by state, ascending. And then actually our where would go from between the from and the group by. Where state equals, and we'll say California. I'll say run. So here we have just the California ones. Maybe we don't want the group by in here at all. Let's remove group by so we can see all of them. And let's say we want first name and last name in there. Run. So that didn't work. Let's take out our order by. We're ordering by state, but we weren't selecting it. It's still not working. Okay. Let's see. So sometimes we'll run into a problem, and usually when I keep running into a problem, I just make my select statement simpler and simpler till I find till I find the something that works, and then I start building back onto it. So let's add amount back in there. So we have the amounts, and let's say sum. We'll summarize the amount, and I think we'll need the group by in there for that to work. Group by, and we'll say last name and first name. Let's try that again. There we go. So now we're getting the totals for each of those names, and and right now it's not sorting necessarily. So let's go ahead and add a sort in there.
Okay, and I'm just going to inject right here that because we run a sort here doesn't magically mean it would be faster than any other sort in FileMaker. So if it's over a wide area network, you broke that. If it's over a wide area network, then you're going to run into the issues where, if you want to sort 10,000 or 20,000, then maybe it's not so fast, right? So.
Right. So the app that I originally built these charts for, we were summarizing a whole bunch of data across for a lot of records, and it wasn't feasible with FileMaker features or with the with native FileMaker. Well, this is native FileMaker, but with the basic FileMaker features or with the ExecuteSQL for it to work at fast enough that it was something that people would like to use. So we ended up running those running that ExecuteSQL statement, select statement, using perform script on server, and then bringing the result through the script result. And so there still can be speed issues with with using this. In some cases, it is very fast, but if it crashes, it will hang up your computer.
All right. So what did we do here that's wrong? So.
Not sure. Let me see if sort by should go first. I think it's group by, sort by.
Yeah.
I killed it.
Yeah, you broke it. You have sort by group. You sort group, right? Is that what you're supposed to have there? Slow down a second and read it.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. So yeah, backtrack. So one of the things that you're seeing here is actually a technique where you figure out what's working, then you slowly keep adding complexity until you break it, right? So.
Mm-hmm.
So now what you're trying to do is do the group again. Is that what you're trying to do, or you already have, or the sort?
Group is in there.
So you need sort. So sort goes at the end.
Sort by. Let's just sort by last name. See
Yeah,
if
try that. So
that didn't work.
does it not like by anything?
That might.
Is
It
it your
looks like it's
sort?
not letting me.
Is the sort in the right place? I hate to break it to you.
It was working with state in that place. So I'm not going to keep messing with it though. But what the biggest point that we wanted to illustrate here is you can
It's
select any.
Christian's saying it's order by, not sort by. Order by.
See, I'm getting.
You've been FileMakered.
I've been FileMaker. Yep.
Yeah, FileMaker is when you take a technical person and then you expose them to FileMaker and it screws up their terminology.
There we go. So let's change. So by default, we were doing last name, first name. And I'm looking at my notes now. It does say order by there. There we go. So we
so your notes said it right. So between your notes and you trying to have a conversation on live TV, you basically choked, which is interesting, right? So it's very educational to watch this, right? So if you start, once again, terminology on one side is different than the terminology on the other side. So there is no sort, right? On the do you use the word sort anywhere in SQL? I'm not an SQL guy, so I'm asking a question.
I don't think so. No, it's order by.
Yeah, there you go. So it's different terminology.
So the really important thing though is that you can put these different functions or different calls in the column, so you can process that data without having an additional summary field or something like that.
So it's actually running the sum of that right there. So you built a SubSummary without having a SubSummary.
Exactly. Yeah, and we'll see if we grab the. Let's go ahead and see how many lines are if we do a value count on the result. We'll see that there's only 74 records. So that means that we've summarized it down from 500 lines to 74 lines, grouping them.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty powerful thing that you can do without having to have summary fields and such.
Okay, so we are trying to tell people, and then Andre, a bunch of everyone's going order by, order by, order by. They're all yelling it through the computer, but your telepathy was just not working. You couldn't hear them. So Andre, and then there's a question here from Quimbode. Is he said DESC or ASC needs to be added? Yeah, you could probably change it by ascending or descending, right?
Right. So if we do not specify ascending or descending, it defaults to ascending, but we can add DSC for descending and change that. Can you specify it for each field?
Nothing like choking on this live on TV.
Yeah.
There you go.
But it brings up one thing though, that a lot of times when we're figuring out the select statement, it'll take a little while to get it just right, and then when you use that, but then every time the script runs it, you're using it and it works. Yeah. As you work on these though, one of the things that we do often is just get something that works, and then we start making it. If I copied and pasted this into the function or into the set variable script step, this would be a very fragile piece of code. If I just changed a table occurrence like we saw earlier from names to TO1 names, that would break the whole thing. So there's some custom functions, and we'll be looking at that tomorrow, at how to make this so that it's not as fragile.
Okay. Well, there's a question from David. David has a question. Could you, basically he's adding, can you do add two amounts together in your sum, right? Because some are, yeah. I mean, could you add like if you had
I don't believe so. Sum doesn't work the same way in this as it does in FileMaker, where you can sum and use the sum function and then add several fields together. There's a great resource that I always go to
Okay.
And when I'm trying to figure out these SQL statements, it's this w3schools.com. And whenever I'm trying to figure out a select statement that isn't quite working, or I just want to see what other options there are, I come here and see them. We just talked about some of the basic ones, the where, minimum, maximum, sum, and there's a lot more select options that are available here. So if we don't have any more questions about that, I'll go on to some of the other resources that you should look at if you're interested in knowing more about these select statements.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's absolutely. And so, I mean, does it? So, does the FileMaker? Actually, I got a question. Does the FileMaker Select? Does it support most of these that are over here? Right. Like it was kind of funny. Like inner join is not a word I would normally use, and one of the folks on Twitch was going, "Looking forward to an inner join," and I'm like, because that's not even a word that's normally in my vocabulary, right? So,
Right. So it does the SQL FileMaker's Execute SQL supports select statements. So a delete, it doesn't support delete. That's not part of a select.
yeah.
And so if we go to select and see the options for a select statement, then those are it supports those.
Yeah, so there's no so then there's obviously no support for that other one. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And this is the information here. Yeah, actually, and it's good to read this stuff. Sometimes you read stuff. Here we go down here at the bottom under notes, third one down, or actually a couple. Probably good to go through the notes to apply correct formatting. SQL treats dates as a little string. Second one down, FileMaker Pro returns date and time numbers in the Unicode SQL format. Not localized. So for those of you who are using we had the conversation about localizing versions of FileMaker, the Hebrew version or the Czech version or whatever Russian versions of FileMaker. It's not going to do that. And then what was the third one down? No, yeah. SQL only accepts SQL 92 syntax. So that was what I was asking the question on. So obviously there's different levels of syntax. Once again, the reason Calvin's here is this is not in my personal wheelhouse. I do a lot of things, and this is not one of them. I consider this like going to the zoo and looking at the hippopotamus and saying, yeah, it's interesting, and then going on from there. But it's a good tool for a lot of you to know and use. I just don't personally. I have plenty enough to do in my day without going down this road. But yeah, go ahead, Calvin.
So the FileMaker help is going to be really helpful just to see what FileMaker can do. And then the W3 Schools is going to give you a lot of options for what you can do with a select statement and what the options are. And you can try it out and see what other options there are. And I've got another tool here. And this is from John Sindelar at Seed Code. It's called the SQL Explorer. And this is where I really got started using ExecuteSQL and kind of learning how it works with FileMaker. I've got a copy of it here, and I'll just kind of show you what it does. And this, you can actually set up your app as an external data source, and this little wizard can help you write SQL queries for your app. So if we look at the first one, this is really
okay. Back up. Have you connected this yet? I mean, you said you could. Have you done that?
Not with this copy of it.
Oh, okay.
I have connected it to apps before and done it that way.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you're going to show us the kind of equivalent stuff going here from. Okay, that's fine.
Well, what's neat about this is that it shows you there's a whole bunch of examples here. So let's go ahead and look at some of these examples that they're showing. And this one is it's his hello world example. So we're just selecting the company name from companies. And when we say run query, in this example, it's showing the result in it's actually a web viewer.
Oh, is that a web viewer?
Yeah, okay. As a virtual list. Yeah, if I select it, it's going to show me what the result was in a custom dialog.
Yep.
But so that's what it's doing there. Let's go ahead and select the next one. As you go along, the criterias become a little more specific, a little more complicated. So here we have select, and we've got a number of fields from this table where we're putting a criteria on it, and then we're sorting it order by company name. And so here's that result is again down here. So we've got 3 options and then a bunch of sample records. And as you go through here, he's got an example of a join. So here we have a left join, and it kind of shows how to do that. And you can see the result. And you can actually write your own query. And if your app is connected as an external data source, you can use your own table occurrences as the run those and get the results on them. Here's the left or inner join. Let's go ahead and look at that. So select company name, project, and company URL from companies, and then we're joining the projects on the company ID, and we want the company ID to we have a like in the where, which so we're just having an H in there. So let's go ahead and run that. So we've got all the projects where there's an H, or all the companies where there's an H. I'm sorry. There's a lot of options that we have here for generating these stats and just setting up a found set.
Yeah, I would point out once again. Notice that the terminology is utterly and totally different than FileMaker, right? So,
right.
Where this company name is like an A has an H in it, right? That's I had just because I don't learn this stuff, that's not one I had seen before. But that there's no equivalent. That's like saying it's a filter, right? So basically, it's a filter, right? So it's interesting.
It's as if they're performing a find. In the example I gave over here, we did where the state equaled California. Here we're saying where the company name and it has the letter H. So anything with a letter H came up. But if you use this tool to put together a query, they've got this really awesome copy function.
Yeah, I was wondering. Okay, because this doesn't look like your thing. Does this ever look like your thing? Then is that what we're trying to do? Like a single line?
No. So in this example, this in his example here, this would actually be select from where group by, or he put this as 4 or 5 lines.
Okay, so they just put a carriage return. So is there a sensitivity to the carriage return in there at all, or not really? I guess
no,
not.
There's not. No. So
okay, got it. So that's why.
Maybe it would have looked better if we made this just put a return in here. And so we'd say, so we're saying select from.
So carriage returns don't mean anything in SQL. See, I just learned something new, right? So.
No, so this makes it a little easier to read.
Okay, so now it looks suspiciously like this over here. Okay, got it. Okay, good. Yeah, well, this is one of those little things, because most places you go, when you put random carriage returns and stuff, that means something, right? That's like going to a 7-Eleven and waving a gun around. That tends to mean something. Just throwing random. I don't generally recommend people put random, characters of any type into anything unless you know what the output's going to be. Apparently, it's not sensitive to that here. So So 2 rules to live by: don't randomly stick returns in places. Don't wave a gun in a 7-Eleven, because then they think you want all the money, and then bad things happen. So, for those of you who have a propensity towards a criminal streak, and for those of you not in the United States, 7-Eleven's like a little corner gas station. People have to remind me that it's my context of not being in the United States. Although the Canadians pretty much know what that is. All you have to do with the Canadians is to add gravy to everything, and then you're set. And they're pretty much like Americans. That was always an interesting one, too. So, traveling the world and doing FileMaker, a new video series.
So we have this copy option, which is really cool. So I can say copy as text, and let me go ahead and open up a new text edit window so we can see what this looks like. And I paste that in, and that's what I was talking about earlier. This is that fragile code.
Yep.
So here it is, if we changed any field names, it would break. But I can also say copy as calculation. And here when I paste this in, you'll
Whoa.
notice
Whoa, 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 whoa.
that if you're basing this on your own it puts it together as a calculation that you can paste into FileMaker and make adjustments or changes to it. And you'll see they're using a let statement to put this together. Did you have any questions there?
No, it's just, one of the things that I've conveniently been very successful in life without needing to learn this. So it's one of those topics that I'm not a giant, it's not really super excited to learn, but I'm actually pulling this product, this tool won, I guess, tool of the year back, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. It was really helpful at the time. Of course, that's back when if you said, oh, well, SQL, isn't isn't the most important change in the FileMaker platform, you got booed off the stage. So it's just it's another tool in your arsenal. And this, if you're going to do it, playing with a tool like this is super useful as well. Christian says, I spent time formatting SQL queries so that it would look like. So when I look at it in the data viewer, I can read it. Since you're on your own, you can catch your mistakes. Someone who has actually helped my SQLs. Oh yeah, so Christian is saying that you don't suck, Calvin. So that's nice.
Oh,
to
thank
know.
you.
Yeah, so you yeah, so yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Even as a developer and you're learning stuff, I'm busily learning, frankly, the new stuff in 19, and there's some propeller head stuff in there. I think that's a little on the, frankly, kind of like this a little bit. And yeah, and everyone here is going to get to see that soon enough. But the reality is that you have to pick what you're going to learn. There are more technical, and I guess this is like a holistic kind of conversation. I'm on the video now on my end, Calvin. If you want to flip to because we're at 1 hour right now. Go back to your camera.
Can I show one last thing?
Well,
on the,
only
copy?
if you promise that you're really going to be awesome when you do it. Hang on.
Well, John Sindler is going to be awesome, but
Okay, go ahead.
So this is the most powerful copy option. Copy is abstracted calculation. When you paste this in, it actually is using the FileMaker fields to build the SQL statement. So this is not fragile.
So stop. So stop. So go back over here. So what's the difference between the middle one and the bottom one?
So the middle one, it just copies it as a calculation, something you can paste into into the FileMaker calculation and make adjustments to. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to go ahead and copy it, and so you can see them side by side.
Yeah.
So you'll see that it's using a let statement to build this, but you'll also see that they're still hard coding the project name, company name, and such. In this case, they're using FileMaker functions.
But in order for this to work, you had to connect that little SQL tool to your actual FileMaker file, so it could actually generate these names correctly. Got it. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So if you connect this to your app,
yep,
you can use it to create this piece of this SQL statement that's not fragile, and then paste it into your script and use it wherever you need.
Yep. Well, that's a really good little demo of that. All right. So now I'm going to flip back because we are actually out of time. And I was going to say something tremendously profound and amazing, and now I forgot. So let me take a look at questions here. TK55678 still there. Been helpful today. Thank you for the tips on that, everyone. Calvin, ooh, easy. Sounds like you're playing with a balloon there, the microphone. Christian says, yeah, sets it generically. That's cool. Yeah, awesome. Lots of good stuff in this. I mean, the rub with this is it's this, once again, this is another tool in your tool chest. I think if you're doing a lot of reporting for customers, things like that, I think coupling the SQL and then also sending it with PSauce is a good way of making it run faster, having it run locally on the machine, on the FileMaker server itself, where the data's on the hard drive right there, really useful. Calvin, once you kick your camera on, Can you do that for me? Let's see. Is your camera back? He is back. He is big and in color. I'm going to make you a little smaller here. All right, great. So any other follow-up questions we had? So yeah, you did choke on the sort and the order issue, but I couldn't have done any better. Obviously, that's kind of where that ends. Do we have content for tomorrow, Calvin? You're going to have to unmute yourself there. Do you have content?
We do. So tomorrow we're going to look at how we're writing those select statements in FM Starting Point for the calendar and in that chart demo app, because what we showed today was the really fragile way of you wouldn't want to use that in a script. It's just kind of a way of introducing the select statement. And then we'll be looking at the FM Starting Point and that chart demo. We'll see how to write it as a calculation that's not fragile and is easier to debug.
Right. Makes perfect sense. Okay, great. Well, I appreciate the feedback and comments. Once again, for those of you wondering about this, I haven't done this yet today. This is the, once again, reminder, if you have questions about FileMaker licensing, you need licensing, you think you've got wrong licensing, whatever, feel free to email us at support@RC Consulting. You can talk to Ryan Correa. And if you want to show your support for this channel, you want to support the channel, make sure that you have fmtraining.tv, our complete or video only bundles. This is where we have all our video training here. And obviously this one here comes with extra goodies, including a full copy of FileMaker Pro Advanced. And obviously if you have subscriptions to either one of these, when the new items come out, like new versions of FileMaker, you're going to get that new version, right? If we have new training, you'll get that too. So very awesome stuff coming up. Once again, if you want a coupon, a discount on either of these items here, just send an email to support@RC Consulting. We greatly appreciate you showing your support. It's how we pay the bills to keep the lights on so we can have Calvin and everyone else. Any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate everyone. And we'll catch you tomorrow. Calvin, thank you. And he's always muted. He always mutes himself and we can't turn him off. All right, everyone, thanks. Press the button. Press the button. Press.
Guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected. The quarterback, great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap, stands in, throws it left for Amendola, reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10, rolling to the 9. Slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.